here to kind of tell us how this whole Top Chef thing started. All right. And today on Real Parallels, Lance, we are incredibly lucky to have with us Lee Anne Wong. How about that?
Yeah, no, great. Top Chef.
Top Chef, which I love the story. She kind of hated that name or didn't realize it was going to be a thing, right? But Lee Anne Wong, producer, restaurateur, mom extraordinaire.
Yeah, and like the behind the scenes, I think it's pretty. It's always cool to hear what you don't see, and it's interesting to get it from Leanne because she's been on both sides, right? She was a contestant, and then they said, "Here you go, figure out how to make the lives of future contestants difficult," and she did.
Welcome to Real Parallels, the entertainment podcast where we share with you our candid chats with celebrities from your favorite movies, series, and shows, and where we gather our collection of our own personalities and experts to see if our favorite movies reflect real life.
Good morning.
Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning.
Before we begin, I just want to say thanks again. It's this is real special for us to have you on. So it is. And so
No problem.
Lance and I consider the years that you produced the formidable years. Those are probably the best years, of Top Chef.
I think, well, here's the thing, is that Top Chef has gotten harder. I think over the years, the talent has gotten a lot stronger in terms, when we first started. I mean, you take a look at my season 1, and like the chef testants, and, it was from across the board. You had like a stay-at-home mom, a private chef, a culinary student, like you had all these different, cooks and chefs from, at various levels. And now you're seeing, James Beard award-winning chefs, Michelin rated chefs competing on the show. So it's I think when we did the Vegas season in season 6, that was like when we were just like, our show's legit, because we got Joël Robuchon and Thomas Keller,
Yes.
and like the Bocuse d'Or. We had like Daniel Boulou, and like all the greatest chefs in the world were like our judges that season, and it validified the show.
Yeah,
Validated.
it was the caliber of who was judging.
Yeah, and I think that particular season, when it was the Voltaggio brothers and Kevin Gillespie and Jen Carroll, like those were some of the best cooks we've still ever seen in the kitchen. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I just competed with Brian and Kevin, and those guys are amazing.
I did post a question in that same Facebook group, and I said, if you had, it was it got 221 responses in like 12 hours, and it was, if you had one last meal, who would you want to make that meal? And it was they came up a lot, but it was, I mean, every name was there though, but that one particularly came up a lot.
Yeah, the Voltaggio brothers are pretty awesome. So
I said you or Fabio. Yeah, just because I mean, you guys would be fun to talk to, and I think that would make it over the top too.
He is very entertaining.
So I found that the Top Chef fan can get pretty nerdy, if you will. Like we have Comic-Con fans who can get incredibly nerdy, Star Wars fans, Star Trek fans, but
I'm sure.
But like, it can get so those responses that Lance was talking about, they got pretty specific.
Okay.
Yeah, they got very. They were like, oh, this. I just asked for names, and they went way further. They were like, I want this. I said for one name, and people were like, I want this person to cook this thing for me, but if this person is feeling nice that day, I'll have that person or something. I went on and on and on, but it was great. They were very passionate.
That's hilarious.
So, Leanne, what do you attribute that to?
It's interesting because I remember very long time ago when we were first cast for the show, and I had basically my boss. I was working at the French Culinary Institute at the time as their executive chef of events and continuing ed, and my immediate manager, she, we worked with Andrea Immer Robinson, who was our dean of wine studies, and she has a show on Fine Living Network. And so I believe Cindy was like out in LA or California filming, and she met the casting director for the first season of Top Chef, Randy Bernstein, and he basically told her about this. Bravo's doing this new reality competition show. It's kind of like Project Runway. It's never been done before. I believe like Hell's Kitchen was kind of filming at the same time, but that was like an in-studio show. And so Top Chef had never been done before. It was like the first show that was like actually ventured out into the field, And so Randy called me the next day, and I remember distinctly, I was like out having dinner in like the Lower East Side. He's like, "Hey, I'm flying to New York. I'd love to meet with you. I met, your boss, Cindy. She said you'd be perfect for a new show for Bravo, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "Have you seen Project Runway?" And I was like, "Yeah, I actually used to be a fashion designer. So, so yeah, I've seen the show." And then he was just like, "Oh, wow." He's like, "Well, we're talking about calling this one Top Chef." And I was like, at the time, the two words Top Chef sounded so stupid together. I was like, Top Chef? What? Top Chef? Like sitting on top, or like you're at the top of the pile? I was like, that sounds so dumb. Yeah. So then, yeah, it was very funny. And then, so I interviewed with him at the Hudson Hotel the next day, and, had a video camera, filled out this like giant like application, had like this 30 page like, consent form from NBC that was super scary. And you sign all this paperwork, you answer these questions, and then you just don't know. And then they called me back, and they're like, we're going to fly you out for a final interview to LA, and they sequester you in a hotel, and it's like basically you and like 30 other people, and they're trying to narrow it down to a field of like, I think we started with 12 the first season. So, and like you get in the room, and you're locked in a room. They take your hotel key, and they're just like, at that point, you can have your phone and stuff like that, but you're supposed to like get a psych eval from
what?
psychiatrist, and then make sure you don't have any emotional. Yeah, you always have to get a psyche eval for these shows. Make sure you don't have any emotional issues.
Really, out of the few people that we've chatted about, I love hearing that, Leanne. So thank you for that. I didn't realize that they did that. That's come from the studio.
Yeah, I mean it's a legal thing from the studio, because honestly, they've had incidents in the past where like players, like contestants have totally like lost their shit on set and like had to go to the rubber rooms.
I wonder, when you said psychiatry thing, I was like, man, that's a good way to find the crazy ones.
And the competition is, it's interesting though, because being put in that fishbowl, it kind of brings out very interesting aspects of people's personalities. So I would say that it is a necessary thing. But anyways, yeah, no. So, it's like you're sequestered when you don't know what's happening. And this was like the first season, so it hadn't been done before. So I'm like in my hotel room at the Renaissance, like LAX, like climbing on chairs, seeing if there's like a hidden video camera in like the hotel room or something like that. Because you just don't know, because you've already signed a paper that says like, I agree that if there are hidden cameras, blah 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 blah, like I'll allow myself to film.
Oh my god!
It's like a standard boilerplate reality TV show contract, like you agree to like huck yourself out of a plane and stuff. So, so yeah, so that's like, that was the first season, and we didn't have any sponsors. We didn't go anywhere fancy. We shot, our studio was in Emeryville, up by Oakland, San Francisco. So it's like we were staying, our house was on Baker Street in the Presidio, but then every day we'd like get in a bunch of minivans and drive an hour across the bay, to Emeryville to film. And, that was before it was a well-oiled machine. So it's like filming took all day. It was like a long game of like hurry up and wait. And, yeah, that was interesting. I always tell everybody, I'm like, the first season, it's like walking barefoot uphill in the snow to school. That's like what it was like. And it's
compared to what it is today.
Compared to what it is now, compared to like what the stew room looks like. Like the stew room has like couches and furniture and a wine fridge and like, a espresso machine. And literally, I think first season we were like put in a storage room with some folding chairs.
Oh my God.
And now it's like a luxury hotel lounge. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's amazing to see where the show has gone and how far it's gone, and just how much the industry has responded to it, in terms of being part of it and being sponsors and helping to make the challenges that much more interesting. So
yeah,
I was telling Carl that Top Chef and Bourdain, and I'm sure a lot of people that weren't too much into food, like I ate it, but I didn't really care about what it like plating and all that stuff and the ingredients. I didn't even know what a caper was at the time. I thought it was seafood. But it was that show and Bourdain that totally got me into looking at food differently, as opposed to just something. It was educational. I learned so much. I would sit there at a restaurant and I would actually kind of know what was on the menu. And then I ventured into try cooking for myself. That failed horribly. So I just watch the show and wish I could cook.
Keep trying. That's like that's the beauty of cooking,
So Lee Anne, how does one go from trying out and taking psych evals and searching for hidden cameras, which I'm sure they have a hidden camera of you searching for a hidden camera. How does one go from being a contestant to deciding you want to produce, and then, as you mentioned, laying the foundation?
At the time, I was working at the French Culinary Institute, so I was like putting on events. And the first season they had our culinary producer was great. Her name was Katie Christ, but it was like her and an assistant, and that was it. And I remember, like just the production itself wasn't prepared for the amount of work. They had never done a culinary show before. They had no idea how much food we would consume, the equipment, the mess that would be made. Like, I just remember not having enough food for one of the challenges. Like, they hadn't like purchased us enough food, so we had to like go out and go shopping. And it's like every time you make a change in production, you have to like you're bringing like the camera crew, the sound guys, the PAs, the assistants. Like it's moving literally an entire production, and it costs dollars, right? So, and they didn't have a big budget the first season, so it was just like all these decisions were kind of crazy. And when we did that first Restaurant Wars, we basically shot it in an abandoned restaurant in the Mission, I think. And at the end of it, like, we didn't have dishwashers. There wasn't like a PA or a culinary team to come clean up after us. And it was like me, Miguel, and Steven literally sitting in a sea of dirty dishes on the floor. And we had to stay and like clean everything up afterwards.
Full circle.
It was just brutal. But I mean, interestingly enough, I did spend the next 4 years of my life doing dishes for the show.
Oh,
so,
right.
So, what's a show like that had never been done before. Most cooking shows were very much like dump and stir studio shows. So to be out in the field and suddenly be like kind of making this mess and like having to be prepared, like, what do I need to provide the chefs, like, when they're cooking?
Dump and stir? When you say dump and stir, it's basically, you mean prep is already done and then people just need to...
No, I'm talking about every standard cooking show that you see on every TV where it's somebody standing in a kitchen in front of a camera, just like, today I'm making this, you know, like,
sure.
That's a dump and stir. Like, that's pretty much it.
Gotcha.
You know? So everything's like meesed out, you know, and like this was dynamic because it's reality TV, so it's not scripted. So you send a bunch of chefs, you know, you send 12 chefs into a grocery store at once, and you're supposed to capture everything that they're shopping for and what's going on in their head and how they're planning their menu and their interactions. Like, it's chaos. So, you know, basically reality TV is like controlled chaos. And that first season was nuts because they were trying to figure out the formula to control the chaos. And it took several seasons to get there, you know? So, you know, and that comes with more people, bigger budget, et cetera, et cetera. So, so they had, when season 2 came around, they were working with a really great culinary producer who had, I think for the most part, you know, she was focused on cookbooks. So suddenly she's in crazy town with like all these, you know, hardwise and reality TV, like cameramen and like just the producers want like crazy stuff. And she's just like, you know, like if you're not built for that sort of mindset of what the show is, then it all seems totally out left field for you. Right. So they had called me and asked me, they're like, hey, you know, we'd love to bring you on as a consultant for the regular season. And maybe, you know, you've been through it and your experience at French Culinary, you can work with our culinary producer to kind of like help, you know, develop challenges and stuff like that. I was like, sure. So they flew me out to LA in downtown. And I basically worked with their team and kind of just said like, no, we need to order more food. We need to get better blenders. We need more this, more that, you know, and it was just, and I worked with the producers on like the challenges and saying like, no, that's not going to read well. The contestants don't like that. This would have been helpful. Like, it just giving them, somebody is very loud over there. My kid is literally shouting.
So you came up with the challenges. You are a little, and I mean this in a nice way, you're a little sadistic. Some of those challenges are crazy.
I mean, so what would I mean, a lot of the challenges I actually came up with, and it's interesting because it's like, you know, like to walk into season 17, it's like, and do a mise en place relay race. I created the first mise en place relay race. That whole thing was my idea. I was just like, okay. Yeah. And I just remember that the first time we did that was season 3. And it was just, it was a lot of fun. And it's good to see it come full circle. And so they had called me, and interestingly enough, they called me for the season 2 finale. They're like, we would like for you to actually produce it by yourself. I was like, okay. And they're like, we're filming in Hawaii. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
And you're living in New York at the time, or you're?
Yeah, I was living in New York. I had never been out to Hawaii. And so I basically flew out to Big Island, Waikoloa, and we stayed at the Hilton. And it was like, that was like a compound. So we weren't allowed to leave the property. And I lived at the Hilton Waikoloa for a couple weeks. So,
wow.
Yeah. And that was, you know, and that was really interesting. And that was like kind of my first time really producing something by myself, and just trying to make it happen in a way that I thought was like beautiful and like that the producers would be happy with. So it was like everything from building an outdoor farmers market on one side of the property, and then like half a mile away on the other side of the property, like building an outdoor kitchen, you know. And it had never been done before, and I just remember at like one point being like, out here, we need to give them like hand washing stations and sinks and whatever. And it was like us trying to like tote like giant like Lexans of water and set up a dishwashing station outside, you know, and the kitchen was like literally like a quarter mile away.
Oh man.
So yeah, I remember I lost like 5 pounds that day just running back and forth on the property. But you know, things like Marcel forgetting his fish when he moves to do his cooking, and then he's like, well, can I kill the carp in the pond? I'm like, no, like, absolutely not, you know. I was like, that is not eating fish, and you cannot kill the property fish. Like, hilarious. So yeah, and it was just being integrated in all those decisions. And it got to be where, season 3, they gave me the job. I got to choose, bring an assistant along. We filmed down in Miami. So we lived at the,
fancy.
the Fontainebleau
You guys
Hotel.
are fancy.
Yeah, well, it was actually
okay.
under construction at the time. It's fancy now, but we were staying at the old Scarface Fontainebleau. So literally, I would wake up every morning, and there would be a bunch of dudes at the tower across the way. Construction was working on my level, and we'd wave to them and stuff. So, but yeah, it was, and again, I think as the show grew, my job as the culinary producer was to develop the challenges, and at some point it became expensive to go shopping for quickfire, so they're like, you're going to do all the shopping for the quickfires, you're going to style out the quickfire, you're going to create this beautiful display for camera that will be their market. I'm like, every episode?
Why was it expensive? Because they had to bring all of them to the grocery store and all that? Oh, got it.
Because you have to bring the crew.
Got it.
You have to bring the crew, and the crew, and it's they're not union, but I know they make really, really good money. So it's, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars per hour, So especially when you're looking at, bringing a crew of 50 plus, you've got drivers, PAs, cameramen, soundmen, producers, lighting, tech, just everything. It's a huge production beyond the fact that, anytime you go to location, you have to put up
right
signage for the public. People don't want to be on camera. You got to get people
a pain
to
in the
sign
butt.
releases.
Yeah,
it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So it was much easier for them to be like, okay, well, we're just going to expand your responsibilities, and you're going to set up all the display for the quick fire and blah, 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 blah. And it was great because it set this tone of okay, the quick fires take place in studio, and then the elimination challenges, happens offsite, so, and it's been, I think by the time I got really good at those displays, I think there was a lot of fun in it for me. I remember we did a dessert challenge, a quick fire in season 4 for Chicago, and Johnny Uzzini, who is a friend of mine, was our judge, and they were like, well, what do we do for the challenge? I was like, what if we just take judge's table and just cover it in desserts and sweets and cakes? They're like, really? I was like, yeah, really. And we, every year we get a deal with Whole Foods. I think we had $50,000 in shopping at Whole Foods that year. And so I call them. All right, I go there and I was like, hey, listen, in 3 days, I'm going to buy out your pastry counter. And they're like, they kind of just look at me and they're like, okay, yeah, whatever. I was like, no, I'm serious. In 3 days, I'm going to take everything. So you can either have more to sell to your customers. I'm just warning you, I'm going to take everything. They didn't believe me. And literally, I think we had a Dodge Caravan, which was Transformer Stone Go seating, and we had an SUV, and we filled from floor to ceiling, jam packed the back of those 2 vehicles with cake boxes.
You just Tetrised it.
We literally, and I'm taking all of the desserts, and they're just the poor people that were working that day are just kind of looking at me and looking at their boss, and they're like, I was like, yeah,
I told you I told you
I was gonna do this.
You didn't believe me. I told you.
Yeah. So those things are fun, and then I've had to set up displays that are weirdest animals on the planet, or just big seafood displays. I remember, yeah,
Stephanie Izard won that one at Chicago, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Stephanie won Chicago, and then Napa, the season 6 finale up in Napa. We built this outdoor farmers market. It took over 18 hours to set it up, and then we tore it down in 1
Oh
hour.
my God.
We call the process build destroy. So it's build destroy. It's like a robot thing, because we would spend all this time building these elaborate sets, and then the contestants would come through and totally wreck it. Then we had to clean it up and move it to another location, or figure out what to do with the food. So it was
So
was a lot.
what's the metric of success when it comes to the I mean, you're producing it, but it's how least you can spend that gets the most viewership, because it's not like it's TV where you can get to see ratings week after
It
week.
is. I mean, it is TV. It's ratings, and quite frankly, we had been nominated for year after year against like The Amazing Race for an Emmy, and that's always the joke on set when you're like, you're laughing with your cameraman friend. You're like, Emmy, this is the shot, And it was just, I think there was something about season 6 that when we cast the show, and we sequestered, we brought in the Voltaggio brothers. We had met Mike Voltaggio on the set of Top Chef Masters, which we shot before season 6. He was our host chef at the SLS Bazaar when it was, I think we're down to like Chiarello, Keller, Anita Lowe, and Rick Bayless, right? And they shot their little version of Restaurant Wars at the SLS Bazaar. And we met Mike Voltaggio, and I was like, you would be perfect for our show. And so we started talking to him, and then he's like, oh, I have a brother who cooks too. And we're like, what? And when we brought them in for interview, it was like they were such different personalities. Like we asked them the same question and got 2 very different answers. And we're like sitting there like rubbing our hands together like Monty Burns, like, oh, this is the Emmy season. This is going to be an Emmy. and for sure it was the season that we won the Emmy for the first time. And I was like, I'm good. I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. It was a lot. It was a lot. When we film, it's like you're filming for 60 days straight. You're like with pre-production and post, like you're working literally every day. And like as culinary, I didn't get a day off ever. And Vegas season was particularly brutal. And I had like blown out my knee on the finale of season 5 in New Orleans, and then
doing what?
So the whole set, like like you have to basically, we would have a quick fire, like we'd have to set up the kitchen, set up the display. They come in, they destroy it. We do the dishes. We reset the kitchen. We do a challenge reveal where they go shopping. They come back. They destroy the kitchen. We reset the kitchen again. Then we got to bring everything to set where they're going to shoot their cook. And then we have to set that up. They come in. They destroy the kitchen. We clean it up. We put it back in a box. We bring it back to set to do judges table, right? So it's like literally moving a house every day of your life, because you're moving tons of equipment. I'm moving like blenders, pots, pans, cutting boards, ingredients, bullshit, and I'm just like, and we were staying, the production was in, the old quarter, and the sidewalk in front of the production office was jacked, and I'm trying to load a 300-pound cooler into a box truck, and my knee buckled. So
oh god,
I was on crutches for the rest of that shoot. And then in Vegas,
was it ACL or like torn cartilage?
I don't know, but it was just, I can't, I won't even get into detail about the rest of that trip. But at some point my culinary assistants got drunk, and one of them caned me in the back of the leg with a stale baguette at Commander's Palace, because she thought it would be funny, except she missed my butt and she hit my legs. And I'm like, I like literally collapsed screaming. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you kidding me? They thought it was the funniest thing. And I'm like, you're drunk and I'm cleaning up the set and you just caned me, even though I'm on crutches with a stale baguette. It was bananas. That was Louise, by the way. Who's a culinary producer in LA. So yeah, there's just been, I tore a bicep muscle, I think, in Vegas, at which point I was just like, I need to stop injuring myself for this job. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
I think there was a point when I was like, I got into Top Chef to build my own career. Now I'm just like making TV for Bravo and NBC, and
well, right.
At that point, I was just like, I need to focus on myself and get back to doing me. And so at that point, I had decided to leave both the show and French Culinary and try and build a little media career for myself. And so I think over, the course between 2009 and 2013, when I moved to Hawaii, I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of shows for Food Network and Cooking Channel, and did some fun things for Discovery Channel, and in the meantime I was, the whole time I had been producing Top Chef, I was doing, I had even forgotten I was doing like this online cooking show called The Wong Way to Cook for Bravo. We always filmed that at French Culinary, but so it was nice, to take those kind of years to explore, and I ended up in Hawaii come the end of 2013. So
yeah, and you've made a great career for yourself in Hawaii. I mean, obviously a name, well respected, and you and I connected. Maybe I was tasked with purchasing something like $15,000 worth of specialized whiskey. Right?
We love whiskey,
I
Carl.
know. And
So
there was like, I'm not kidding you, but just chatting with all of these different aficionados, and like, you have to get Lee Anne. I'm like, well, okay, the company that I was doing this event for basically said, no, we need a few different options. And that's when I had to say, I'm like, I don't think we do. I think this is the way to go. Lee Anne Wong has her face on the bottle of Maker's Mark, a limited edition Maker's Mark right now.
Yeah. I do like my whiskey.
Yeah. So, but when you did this wonderful event for us, it was whole animal cooking, and expertly pairing it with different whiskeys. We even had Kieran Elliott. He's got some funny stuff on YouTube, but we decided, well, okay, get Lee Anne, and Lee Anne's here, and lo and behold, you have a baby, and you're bringing your baby to this venue, every morning that we're prepping for these events. And in my head, I'm like, I don't know how you do it all, having restaurants, balancing baby, and doing these massive. You have a Lyle. Do you want to tell us what a Lyle is?
Lyle is my wonderful partner, husband to be, who is literally a super dad, like born to be a dad.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
he would say otherwise, but
when I
so much that the Japanese moms at Pocky Park in Honolulu fully brought him into their circle. Awesome. Who's this guy who's really playing with his kid? Who's this homeless guy playing with his kid?
Carl, are you part of a mommy park group yet, or you just?
No, we haven't even been outside of the house. I plan to be a Lyle, right? If that sounds like it's the measure. It's the bar.
It is the bar. It is the bar. You're gonna have to see if you can get in with the Japanese moms at Pocky Park. That is the bar.
When I met Lyle was basically bringing your son to the event space.
Yeah.
Picking up, running to 3 different markets because we need Luxardo cherries.
Yep.
He did it all for you and your family.
Yeah.
So, that support is still, I guess, pretty important.
We're still doing teamwork. I just recently took over, last year I took over the Pioneer Inn, the restaurant at the Pioneer Inn in Lahaina, and Lyle is an incredible graphic designer, and we've got a laser the size of a Mini Cooper in our garage, and so he's been we've been working together, creating signage, and he does all my menus and graphic design for the restaurant. It's just been incredible, and I'm so blessed to have somebody so talented that I'm just I'm like, hey, can we make a sign? He's like, yeah, nope.
Well,
yeah, we were up till 1 a.m. making signs last night. So
So I do want to ask you this, and I know I mentioned it really briefly in a text. So, my wife, and she opted not. I asked her if she wanted to be on the podcast, and she's like, absolutely not. Just represent us. Hey, buddy. So my wife just recently started going back into the workplace. She was the director of sales and marketing for one of the major hotels in Waikiki, and is recently going back after having our daughter.
Yeah.
How she feels like she's not going to be able to perform at the level at which she was before she had the baby. Mind you, she's worked incredibly hard to get where she's at, to gain the respect in the field, which is a very competitive field, as you know, in Waikiki. So, what advice would you have for people like my wife who are out there and like, how do I do this? How do I manage a career as well as I did before, but this time taking care of the most important thing, as well as a husband? She's going to take care of me too, unfortunately, right? Even though I'm a heavy support, I'm the biggest support.
So there are a couple there. You got a couple. That's a big ball of wax there. It's an interesting, with when Lyle and I got pregnant, we discussed a couple of things, and we said, it doesn't make sense for us to both work and spend money to pay somebody else to raise our kid. And like, my mom was like, get a job, you can't.
At the ultrasound place where Lee Anne was.
I think the day we found out it was going to be a boy, which was like my birthday. My mom was like, well, you both need to work, Both her and my dad worked and raised me and my brother, and so the
first generation, second generation.
Yeah, the concept of like, not only just one person working, but like the female working to support the household was like really, really bizarre to my mom, who still, I think for some reason was like, I remember when she used to chastise me for bartending. She's like, you can be a bartender the rest of your life. And like, then I started cooking for $8 an hour. She's like, why don't you go back to bartending, So it's like, hindsight is 20/20 with my mom. So, again, I think your wife there are a couple things that are going on. And first of all, like as your partner and as her partner and husband, like, she physically does not feel fit. It took me, I thought I was dying for a year and a half after I gave birth. Like literally, I couldn't move. I was like arthritic. I had like, it's just like everything hurt. My body was broken from having a baby. And I, it's like, I'm not young. I'm 43. So I had Rye when I was 40, I guess. 41, but so it's, I think that physical, being that in that like physical pain, because it's like you have a baby, right? And it's like you spend all this money on like prenatal care with like a hospital doctor, doula, whatever, and then like after you have the baby, nobody's like, hey, how you doing? Everyone's like, oh, the baby, so it's less about the mom and the fact that like you've like as a human being you've just created a life, which is phenomenal. I mean, it's like, we deal with all these things like having to get our bodies back and like just all this pressure of like suddenly having to go from creating a life to getting back into like, oh, 3 months from now I'm supposed to go back to work, or there are all these sort of like standards that have been set within our society, right? At least our American society. And it's hard, that pressure of like feeling, okay, I got to go back to work. I got to make money. How am I going to balance it with the kid? I'm supposed to breastfeed. Like, oh my God, my boobs are swelling. I'm going to like, like just like all these things that you have to go through during work and through your day. And it's not, society hasn't made it okay for women to be moms and be worker bees at the same time.
Plus for you, it was, I can imagine it's definitely different because you're in the public eye too. I mean, you're on TV and stuff, right?
For sure, but like, how would I can't like have my baby on my back at work and then whip out my boob in the middle of brunch service, you know, like I can't do that, and I should be able to do that.
I mean, you
can, you know, like
incredibly quiet. There's no cords. It's battery operated. I think they're like 400 a piece, but it's like the
pump while I'm driving. I'm like, no. Like, no. Okay, first of all, I live 5 minutes from work. Secondly, no. Like, that sounds like distracting. Like, that's worse than like eating and playing with your cell phone in your car while you're driving. So I can't imagine like pumping while you're driving and then something going wrong and then you're trying to like fidget with yourself while you're driving. So, you know, in general, it was hard. Breastfeeding is not easy, for one. But beyond that, you know, the second I went back to work, and I started back at work way too soon, I ended up in a C-section.
Oh, God.
And I should have probably stayed home in bed for 3 months rather than 3 weeks, you know. And, you know, because of all of that activity so soon after, I think I did a lot more. It was harder for me to heal. For my body to recover, and it took a super, super long time. And, you know, to an extent, my body will never be the same. You know, I always look at my son like he broke me. It is true. I think there is obviously, you know, as you know, there's always going to be that bond between the mother and the child. And, you know, I think for me, it was just, again, the pressure of feeling like, am I doing this right? You know, it's like, you can read all the guidebooks and all the books and watch all the YouTubes and get the apps and all that shit. And yeah, it helps. But at the end of the day, it's like, you have this brand new human being who doesn't understand anything, can barely see, is like just, you know, is like a sensory sponge, you know, and it's just really, really, you know, you spend that first year in Hawaii. The first birthday is such a big deal. And this was a new thing for me where everyone's like, what are you going to do for the first birthday? And blah, 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 blah. And I'm like,
me too.
The kid doesn't even care. The kid won't remember it. You're really celebrating. It's like an adult party to celebrate not killing.
Yeah, if anyone's listening, listening from the mainland,
that's what it was.
Do you know the history, Lee Anne, behind? Carl, I'm sure you guys know too. I didn't know that was a thing. Do you?
Yes.
Yeah, well, a lot of children used to die before the first year of birth.
The infant mortality rate was pretty high, and then I guess right around when they started introducing poi to the diets, that's when it cut it in half.
Oh, I didn't know
that. So
Lolo every week. So the first year was super hard, and as I get back into work, and now, you know, it's like I'm in the process of reopening a restaurant, and kind of, which is also crazy, but during times of COVID. But you know, trying to find that balance where, you know, I'm pulling 12, 16-hour days often. And right now I'm actually on the 7-day a week, no days off schedule.
It's a very physical job. I've told numerous people, you know, I've opened up my own restaurants in the past in Chicago, and at my age right now, 40, I'm 47. I don't think I'd be able to do it today, because
it does. Trust me, I do not have the energy that I had 6 years ago.
What's the name of the new restaurant, and when does it open?
It is Papa Ina at the Pioneer Inn, and it's been, you know, the Pioneer Inn is Maui's oldest and longest running hotel since 1901. So the hotel's almost 120 years old, and yeah, I mean, I came on board last fall, and right as I was like shooting Top Chef, and took over. Basically, you know, it had been serving very much standard fare for the longest time. You know, like fish and chips, burgers, Kahlua pork quesadillas, nachos, kind of like very much there's a lot of that in downtown Lahaina, just because it is such a heavy tourist market, you know. And so it's been challenging, but also, you know, fun to kind of, and we're starting to see it a little bit now, but it takes time to change culture from within, and also to do that with our customers. And really, COVID was kind of an advantage for us. It's a terrible thing to say, but
it's a reset.
What that has allowed us to do is, we slowed down the business, and rather be suddenly inundated with, where we're dealing with those traditional crowds the way it was before we closed. We've been slowly able to take a break, open up, kind of bring in locals. You get locals into downtown Lahaina, because locals do not come to downtown Lahaina. Usually there's no parking, and so to be able to, it's the same way that you've seen locals come out and populate Waikiki, right? For people to come enjoy the island and enjoy the neighborhoods that they wouldn't normally frequent, has been really nice. And we've been able to sort of build this small following already, where people are like, hey, go eat here. And we're so lucky, because we have this beautiful outdoor courtyard that overlooks the ocean, and it has trees and shaded, and it's just, we got a talking parrot. Like, I mean, it's people feel, in this day and age, people feel very comfortable eating outdoors. Nice. And we have that space, so that's an advantage for us. And the owners invested almost $1 million to renovate the restaurant, which is still closed right now because we can't afford to staff it at this point in time. So it's like, we'll just, I didn't plan on having a full service restaurant. Before COVID, we were going to go to a quick service model. It had always been a full service restaurant, but I had been moving towards a quick service model, and we installed this like grab and go area with like where you can get, it's like a deli counter and like coffee, and like there's like a turbo chef and a panini grill behind it. So the idea was for us to be able to really provide a service to the Banyan Tree and Harbor area that had not existed. Everything is like a full-on sit-down restaurant in the area, so to be able to have that kind of grab and go for our customers is just huge. So I'm looking forward to getting that up and running when traffic and tourism returns. But in the meantime,
kind of in the same vein that Tin Roof did their kind of like their grab and go.
There's and there's nothing like that in the area. Everything's like a sit down restaurant, and I'm like, where we lose money is on the front and back end. It's like takes 15 minutes to hail your waiter, to get the drink order, to get your drink, and then like another 10 minutes to like get them to get your check. And it's just, you just, when we're busy, we just want to be able to service everybody efficiently in the area. And I think this is a really good way to do it. And so what's interesting is that, we had planned for this long before we even had heard of COVID. So,
well, it's funny that you talk about trends that way. I am a big, I'm sure you do this all the time. Like we've been around the industry, food and beverage, for such a long time that we've seen trends come and go. Do you see maybe in the next 10 years? That's my baby now. She's hungry. Do you see in the next 10 years a resurgence of that old school fine dining service coming back?
Listen, there will always be the 1%, right? So there will always be a need for some sort of fine dining scenario. However, considering how this pandemic has decimated our industry across the country because of failed leadership, and it continues to, we don't know what is going to come out. People are like, oh, it's a culling, it's survival of the fittest. And you know what? That's a really terrible attitude, because what a lot of people don't understand is really whether you're a fine dining restaurant with, multi-million-dollar investors, or you're a small mom and pop, like people are losing, and some people are losing their livelihoods, from investors to owners to the cooks to the dishwasher to the farmer to the fisherman, to the producer who we buy from. And that the chain reaction down the line is terrible, and it's very consequential. And the fact that PPP money went to bail out multi-million-dollar corporations that have shareholders that are publicly traded versus a small business is shameful. And it's everything that's wrong with our country right now. Okay. Like, I think what we're going to see in the next few years depends on what happens in 8 days. You know, so you have to, and, you know, it's like my biggest fear is like what happens between, you know, November 3rd and January 20th. Because if somebody's on the losing end, then he really doesn't give a flying.
Yep, there's that 2 months.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be as destructive as possible before I leave office. And you wouldn't think it was possible, and then they scrape the bottom again. So, you know, we're talking about, when we talk about the climate, nothing on my menu is priced over $20. Nothing. Like, you can come get a Top Chef fried chicken sandwich for $12, you know, and that's like same with Sheldon. And like, he gets it. He's like, this is, you know, his restaurant's in Kahului, which very much serves a local population. My restaurant is in Lahaina, which is the number one town. If you Google it, Lahaina is the number one town in America. And Kahului.
Yeah, they were grouped together.
Yeah. But those two towns are the two towns most adversely economically affected by the pandemic.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, loss
That's
of
pretty
jobs,
close. That
loss
hits
of
home,
jobs, loss of economy. And like, if you go down Front Street, it's slowly starting to open up, but shit's still boarded up, you know, like it's, and, you know, my owner is like, you know, we opened up because we're a hotel, and we were, you know, at one point when they opened up inter-island travel, it was great because we were starting to see traffic from Kauai, from Oahu, et cetera, et cetera. But then, you know, our leaders shut it down again. And it's like tourists from mainland can come, but nobody from Oahu can come over to Maui. It's just whack. So, you know, we have been able to see the trickle, and, you know, I'm getting emails and stuff from like DoorDash and like Uber Eats. Like, we've gotten a lot of requests for your restaurant, you know, sign up with us. I'm like, no, you haven't. I was like, nobody's ordering takeout on the West Side. Everyone's broke and out of a job, because a majority of the people who work on the West Side are in hospitality. They work in hotels, restaurants, the service industry, and almost everybody's out of a job. And it's hard to see, you know, and it's, you know, we've been busy trying to do special events every Friday night, every weekend. Like, we're only open for brunch from 8 to 2 because there was no dinner traffic whatsoever, you know. And even now with tourists, I'm hesitant to open up for dinner at this point, because I'm just, you know, 8 to 2, we got our niche market, we can control our costs. And we're doing these, like, you know, Friday night events. We do a $40 multi-course meal every Friday, special brunches on Saturday, Sunday. And it's been good. But again, the traffic's not heavy. It's like, we did a Paniolo barbecue. We bought like half a steer from Lopez Farm the other weekend. And it was like, you know, full service in the courtyard, Friday night dinner, Saturday, Sunday brunch. And yeah, you know, the owner's like, oh, wasn't that a great weekend? And I was just like, could have been better. You got to put it in perspective. And I'm like, it was a lot of labor. A lot of people were turned away at the door. Like, I you know, I need to work on my front of the house. We need to work on how we can accommodate more people. Like, there were all these ways that we made more money that I unfortunately couldn't have my hands on because I was busy. I was one of the 3 people in the kitchen cooking everything, you know? So,
like, one good weekend doesn't balance off 3 other
terrible weekends, you know? So it's,
subpar weekends. Like, so in the restaurant industry,
we're trying, you know, and I think that the effort's being made, and it's not perfect. We make mistakes, you know, but we're trying to connect with the community. You know, people come in and they're like, do you have Kama'aina discount? I'm like, it's priced for Kama'aina. You guys are the only people we're cooking for right now. Like, tourists aren't, you know what I mean? Like, again, we're at a really interesting point where we're going to see if the state is ready. They've had, you know, almost 8 months to prepare at this point, and Ige's sitting on a $500,000 slush fund. So, you know, like, you know, I think it's hopefully that we are prepared, that we have contact tracing and testing in place, and that, you know, our hospitals are well staffed and well supplied, because that's what that money should be going towards right now. Is we have to open up our state at this point. You know, it can't be like another shutdown. It's like Lanai, just shut down again, and they're on a stay-at-home because
I know
they haven't had it the entire time. One housekeeper went to Oahu, went to a baby shower, came back with COVID, and then they had like a housekeeper's party, like welcome back to work, and that's how it spread. So it's carelessness by our own community, you know, and we have to be vigilant, especially now with tourists coming back to the islands, you know. Otherwise, all the sacrifices have been made, all the businesses that have closed down, all the people who have been sick, passed away. It's like people who are out of work. It's just, it all makes it, you know, it's not worth it. It's like, you guys, people can't follow the rules still, you know.
Wear a mask.
Well, thank you for this. You're so well spoken, and you know, Lance and I were really excited because we know how passionate you are about a lot of things, and thank you for getting a little political too as well. We appreciate you being very candid. So,
hey, Lee Anne, before we sign off though, I want to ask one question, and this came from Facebook. The other question about the contestant, or the going from contestant to culinary producer, that came from a Rose Johnson on Facebook. But this one's from Alan Ball, and he was the first one to ask the question, and I'm interested in this one as well. And it's, if you could choose any 3 contestants from any season to do Restaurant Wars with, who would you choose? And would you use the restaurant you pitched in season 17?
Oh, Jesus. No, and no, and no. Yeah, that was a really confusing challenge for me, because I was like, wait, are we pitching this here? Are we pitching this for like a concept back home? Is this something I'm supposed to sell for Restaurant Wars? I was actually really kind of confused by the challenge, truthfully. Hence my poor showing. I'm like, I'm not sure if this is supposed to be like a restaurant for now, or is this something I'm opening up in reality? I don't know. Anyways, but I would definitely pick any from all the seasons.
Yeah.
All the seasons.
This is going to be big because
favorites. Stephanie Izard's a really good friend of mine, so I love Stephanie, even though she almost sent me home. I literally text her after the challenge, was like, I'm so sorry. It's like, that was embarrassing. Yeah, Stephanie Izard is amazing. She's a good friend. Jen Carroll is also somebody that I just love and adore to death. And then I really enjoyed working with Eric Ajapong. I think is such a young, bright talent with a really good head on his shoulders, you know. I think he is just he's just incredible, and has a really good point of view, you know, in terms of his food is interesting. You know, he's returning to his African roots, etc. And also Greg Gourdet. I've known Greg for over 20 years, so it was awesome to shoot the season with Gregory. Just because we've known each other for so long. We used to party in New York City together, like way back when. And so those would be like 4 people that
that's
I would
your all-star team,
battle with.
That's great.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Lee Anne, thanks again. You know, by the time this airs, Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, we'll already be past the election date, right?
What date's the election on? That's the November 3rd?
November 3rd, Tuesday.
You think we can get it out by the 3rd, Carl? Somewhere around the 3rd. Yeah, I think so. People are excited about this one.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Vote. Exercise your right, even if you're not going to vote for the right team.
Yeah. With that said, thanks so much, Lee Anne. We appreciate your time this morning. Please say hi to Lyle and your son. And
Lee Anne, when we're out of this, we're going to have people in a studio to be in person, and we want to have you back, and we'll have whiskey just for you.
All right, perfect. Sounds good. I'll let you know when I'm back on Oahu.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Okay.
Cheers.